Hi, good morning.
Hey, how are you? It's Meryl.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Yeah, well, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course. I'm just sharing my screen right now, so my presentation is up.
All right. Oh, good. Everything's working. Yeah, I like that you put the logo on there.
Thank you.
So I'm the director of Art Equals Opportunity.
Oh, awesome. I actually, that was the first conference I attended when I graduated my teaching credential. And I go to the Art and Powers Mega Conference every year, so I've heard you speak before.
Oh,
It's,
that's great.
yeah.
Very cool. I think Chris will get on at any point. She'll get on soon. So, um, and I think we've got over, I can't, when I looked at the list yesterday, it looked like over 40 people. So that's good.
Okay, cool. I'm excited. These are lessons I do with my students, so yeah.
That's great. All right. I'm going to go ahead and just mute myself for now, and I'll be back on when some more folks come on. Just wanted to say hi and get on.
Okay, awesome.
Oh, you got something in your hair. Hey, Laura, it's Meryl.
Hi, Meryl. How's it going? Funny, we have to see each other this way, better than the parking lot on campus.
Oh boy, so glad you're part of this.
I know, me too. Chris gave me a few talking points she'd like me to share today. I hope she told you that.
Yes, I'm really thrilled. So I'll probably welcome people, then introduce you.
Okay, sounds good. And then Olivia will take over the show.
That is so cool. Hey, Olivia, maybe you're going to address this in your talk anyways, but how did you get interested in making books?
I took a lot of classes in my undergrad at SDSU in the book arts field. I was a studio art major, and then I just kind of was looking through the catalog and it piqued my interest. And then once I started doing it, yeah, it was really fascinating. So I kind of actually forgot about it. And then through social media, I was seeing project ideas from other art teachers. And then I remembered all of the cool stuff I did in college. And so I started to implement that into my curriculum.
It's so cool. I'll have to, my uncle who lives in New Mexico is a crazy artist who makes I mean, gallery, museum grade book art stuff.
Yeah, it's such a cool medium. So
cool. Yeah. I think people are starting to come into the room.
Yeah.
Which is really great. All right. Hey, Hannah, by the way, hi to you. I don't know if you remember me and my daughter, Lily.
Oh, I do. Actually, my dad told me about, like, he was like, oh, I think you're reading one of my friend's books. And I was like, oh, okay.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm glad you're in this class. I'm glad you're in the workshop, but I'm glad you're in the VPA 321 class. In fact, I'll be performing on Monday for your class.
I'm excited.
Cool. All right.
I too see familiar faces. Chase, hi, how are you? Cleo,
Hi,
how are you? Good to see you. Thanks for joining us today.
All right. Hi, Nancy. Hi, Karina. Hi, Leah. I see a bunch of people that I know too here, which is really great. All right.
Always sounds like I should go run for the doorbell.
I know. Isn't it great? We're all right. It's not quite 10 yet. We'll give people just a couple of minutes to come on in. We're starting to get up there, which is really great. All right. All right, for those of you who are on, we're going to wait just a couple more minutes. You are in the right place. This is the workshop on the art of the book. We'll give just another minute or two to let a couple more people in, and then we'll get started. Hello back. We could do a check-in for people. How you feeling this morning? Go ahead and write it in the chat. Yeah, great, great. Oh, good. Tired but excited, good. Tired, pretty good. Great. Ah, buenos dias. Excited, good. Yeah, this is a kind of wild time of the semester. I'm so glad to read several greats. And Karina, I hope you have something for your hunger. Ah, Mrs. Bullard. All right. Break has, yeah, break. I think almost everybody except those of us who are teaching at Cal State San Marcos have break next week. All right, let's give one more minute and then we will start because we've got a critical mass here now. All right, Olivia and Laura, are you ready for me to? Okay, so good morning, everybody. I'm Meryl Goldberg, and I am a professor at Cal State San Marcos. I teach in the School of Arts. My area is learning through the arts. I teach VPA 321. And starting this year, it's a requirement. It's morphed into Music 250 and Dance 350, but all liberal studies students after this year are going to require to have 2 semesters of learning through the arts, which I think is just fantastic because who wouldn't want to learn through the arts in classrooms? It makes so much sense. Welcoming you on behalf of the university and Art Equals Opportunity, which is a part of Center Artes on campus. And our goal at Art Equals Opportunity is to really be advocates for kids, for teachers, and for parents. We are completely research-based, and our the main things that we do are a literacy residency, professional development like today, and boot camps. We have a college and career readiness activity that we do with creative youth development. And we also have a really robust STEAM ambassadors or arts ambassadors who are developing curriculum and going out into schools virtually and in hybrid. And eventually when we all get back, we'll go there. So super thankful to have all of you here. I'm excited to introduce Laura Wendling, who's going to introduce our speaker. Laura and I go back at least 25 years. And we were professors together in what was then the College of Education. She's in School of Education now, and I am in School of Arts. And Laura is a wonderful professor who has integrated the arts and has lots of experience in museum education. And so I am just so happy to have known her for all of these years. And Laura, without further ado, I'm handing the floor over to you.
Thank you so much, Meryl. It's so nice to see you and everybody here today, especially as it's getting close to the end of the semester. And this is just the sort of positivity and event that will just energize us to get through the next few weeks. But on behalf of the Virginia Hanson Committee and the School of Education, I really want to welcome you to the Art of the Book. We are so thrilled to have Olivia Bernardi with us today. And I have to start by extending a huge congratulations to her She's not only a dynamic art teacher, but just this past week, she completed her Master's of Art degree in Reading, Language, and Literacy. So yay, Olivia, way to go. That's awesome. I hope you're doing your happy dance now.
Yeah, I definitely am.
And we wanted you all to know that today's event is sponsored by the Virginia Hansen Endowment Fund. So Virginia Hansen dedicated her life to being the best educator possible for young children. And she also served as a cooperating teacher. So she helped numerous future teachers hone their skills. And in 1998, the Virginia Hansen Endowment Fund was established at CSUSM School of Education through the generosity of her husband, Mr. Victor Hansen, as a way of honoring her work and her memory. So the School of Education uses part of the funds to purchase instructional materials for the Hansen Library Room, which is up on the 5th floor of Kellogg Library. And then it also sponsors events like this. So over the years, we've had a variety of speakers provide innovative ideas and best practices for current and future teachers. And in this way, we've been able to keep Virginia Hansen's legacy alive vibrantly in the hearts and the minds and practice of San Diego's teachers. So we are very fortunate to have Olivia here today, and I know we are all going to have a great time. I have been busy this morning cutting out lots of little pieces of paper, so I'm very curious to see what we're going to do with them. So take it over, Olivia.
Well, I am very excited to be here as well, and to kind of instill my interest in book arts with all of you. So a little bit about myself. I received my undergrad at SDSU. I have a degree in studio art, and I went through Cal State San Marcos middle level program, and just recently finished with my master's in literacy. So my passions in art and with literacy kind of combine in the curriculum that I provide with my students. And I love Art Equals Opportunity because I think it's so powerful to provide students with the opportunity to really find their creativity and to recognize that every single child and every single person has the ability inside of them to be an artist. So it's just helping everyone find their potential and to see their niche. So that's why I became an art educator. I'm a 4th-year teacher with Poway Unified. And yeah, I've got my single subject and multiple subject credentials. This is my contact information, so my personal email address if you'd ever like to reach me. And I do have an Instagram account for my teaching. It's at Miss Bernardi's class. So I post curriculum, student samples there. And it's a really good way to stay connected with other art educators if that's something that you haven't explored yet. I love using social media to find ideas, to get inspiration. Yeah, and then a little bit about how I got into book art. So during my undergraduate program, I was looking through the catalog trying to find some studio classes, and I noticed that they had a class called The Art of the Book. And reading has always been a passion of mine. That's why I chose to pursue my master's in literacy. But in that class, they said they're going to combine printmaking with some bookmaking techniques. So in my initial class, the beginning level class, I learned a lot of the techniques that I now use with my students, including the accordion style book that I use for my sketchbook. This is actually the accordion book that I made for my class in college. So it's a little bit bigger and it's bound. So you'll find that the one that I use with my students is a little less complex. And then the 1-page book, again, this one's bound, but we folded a single sheet of paper and turned it into a multi-page book. So both of these, although I did do them in college, are things that I do with my students. And it was also during that class in an advanced section where I learned about the special collections department at SDSU in their library. And that's where I learned about the concept of artist books, which is what we'll be talking about later. So all of these things I learned as a college student, but I found that my students have really dived into these concepts with me. that kind of brings us to the agenda. We'll be doing 2 activities today. We'll start off with the accordion sketchbook, and then we'll do the 1-page book. I'll talk a little bit about how I use it with my students, and then we'll talk about artist books, and I'll end with a Q&A if you have any questions about what it is that I've introduced. So yeah. So the first thing that we're going to do is the accordion sketchbook. So for this activity, you're going to need 2 strips of white paper, and I've chosen to use 18 by 8 just because I have, project paper in my classroom and I can cut it in 3s really easily. But as I mentioned in the email, you can really do any ratio as long as it kind of follows the same guidelines. So 2 long strips of white paper, 2 pieces of cardboard, 2 small pieces of construction paper, I did 3 1/4 by 4 1/4, and then 2 slightly larger pieces of paper, some scissors, and glue. So I'll also be providing all of these instructions to everyone, as well as the videos and everything that I use with my students. This is the first project that I do in the school year with my wheel students. So I teach several sections of art, and one of them is a wheel class where we're together for 9 weeks. And I really like this project because it allows us to start off right off the bat with, a traditional technique, but it also allows us to, gain a product that we can use throughout the quarter together. Students work in these sketchbooks every single day, and it's compact. So it's not like it's taking a lot of space. I know that, in art rooms, we typically have student storage, not always. And so this is just a small book that kids can either carry around in their backpack easy, or it can fit in a drawer really easily. So that's why I like this structure. So like I said, I use the accordion sketchbook every single day, and we use them as a way to do a warm up or a bell ringer. All of the prompts that I provide my students are open-ended. So they are given this worksheet. It's a handout, and each of them has a word in one of the shapes. Students can pick whichever one they feel drawn to for that day, and then they practice some word association. So what do I think of when, sorry, I have shared my screen. Maybe if I stop sharing it and start sharing it again, it'll work for everyone. Sometimes this happens with my students where if I've started sharing it and then they join the Zoom, they can't see. So there it is again. I'm going to use a teaching technique. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my shared screen. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, so my students practice some word association, and they can draw whatever the word makes them think of. And it's a good way for them to practice creating, some visual pieces of text. They can go in any order, and then they fill in the shapes as they go so they can kind of keep track of their progress. And this presentation, like I said, will be provided. And this picture is actually a link, and you can download the handout yourself if you want to use it with your own students or for your own personal purposes. So yeah, and again, everything's compact. That's why I like to keep everything small. The other thing that I allow my students to do that we won't have time to do today is to design the covers of their books. So I think that this is a really good way for them to personalize their work, and it gets them really excited about using this and taking good care of this book. So once they've put the work in, we spent a whole class period doing both of the covers, and I found that they take a lot better care of something that they've made by hand than a book that they, maybe went out and purchased. So what I do when I give them the chance to do the book covers is we talk about kind of composition. And so again, we won't really have time to sit down and really go through this process together, but I ask that they trace the cardboard on the large sheet of paper. And then they know that these are kind of the constraints that they're working in. Anything else outside of the box we talk about is going to get wrapped around and covered. So they have a surface that they're working inside of, and they can do anything they want. They can draw. A lot of my students get really into collage. I have a ton of magazines, so if that's something you have in your classroom, it's a good way for them to start thinking about different types of art too. A lot of them have never really done collage before, so I think that this is another way to kind of incorporate different mediums in a single project. These are some of the examples. So one of my students, he wanted his to be about his journey in art, so that's why he's on the moon. And then one of my other students wanted to just do a bunch of patterns. So it's really open-ended and allows students to kind of explore their creativity from the beginning. Okay. Oh. All right. So I think I need to figure out why that video is not working. But essentially what I do when I do this project is I show my students a video first. We watch it all the way through, and then sometimes I even play it again so that they can see the steps before we actually do them. Since you're all here, we can do it live together. But what I do first is I show them how to glue the cardboard boxes or the cardboard pieces onto the larger piece of paper. So that's the first step. So you're going to want to glue both pieces of cardboard into the center of the large pieces of paper. And we can do that now if you're going to be following along. So gluing it down, whoops, into the center piece of paper. And I actually also have the steps. So we watch the video and then I show them the steps and we all do it together too. I should probably mention that I work with middle school students. So if you were doing this with high school age students, it would be a lot easier to give them the steps and they could do it independently. Middle school, elementary school, you would probably want to do the video and then do the steps. So gluing the pieces of cardboard. So right in the center, just like that. One per piece of paper onto your big pieces of cardboard. And because my students are working with pages that have designs on them, we also talk about how to find the area with the image. And what they do in order to make sure that it's centered is that they line it right over where they've drawn, and then they just make slight creases so that they know that they need to turn it over and kind of glue it within those perimeters. And again, that's if you've chosen to design your cover. Does that make sense? Okay. So gluing to the center of the paper. We should have two pieces of paper, both with the cardboard in the center. All right, step number 2. So this is where we're going to need the scissors, and we're going to be cutting diagonally from the edge corners of the paper down to the corner of the cardboard. So four slits on each piece of paper. And then we are going to glue 2 sides down first. So 2 sides that are parallel from each other. It can either be the top or the sides but 2 sides down. And in order to make sure that it's very secure on there, after my students have applied the glue and kind of folded it over, we use the bottom part of our glue stick to really kind of push it down there and get it really firmly onto the top part of the cardboard. And I tell them that in book arts, we use a tool called a bone folder, and that's what we use to actually press. But because we are working on a budget, we use the top of our glue sticks. Once we have the 2 edges glued down too, you want to trim kind of that little leftovers that are hanging over. And then you're going to repeat on the other flaps. Glue down and trim. So when it's done, it should be on one side completely covered in paper and then evenly folded, trimmed. And we'll do that with both pieces. Okay. All right. Give me a thumbs up if you're ready to go on to the next step. Awesome. Okay. So the next thing we want to do, we're actually going to jump to step 4 because we've already glued our edges, is we're going to cover that leftover cardboard with our smaller piece of paper. So we're going to glue it right on top. And it was this level of detail that I learned in my bookmaking classes. And with book arts, you're really considering things like the type of paper that you're using, the color choice. And all of this is stuff that I give my students the option to choose. Well, not the paper type. They just use construction paper, but you get to pick whatever colors they want. And another tip, again, is when you glue the paper down, is using the top part or the bottom part of the glue stick to really push it in there and get it nice and flat, especially the corners of the paper so that it doesn't pull up eventually. So when you're done, you should have a piece of cardboard, a nice cover that's hiding those trimmed corners. step number 5. This is the part that I always find my students need the most help with because we're going to be folding and using some math. I tell them, you think you're not going to use math? You'll always use math. So you've got your long strip, and the first thing you want to do is you want to fold it in half. We're going to do this with full strips of paper. Mine's already folded a little bit, but take it. Both long strips and just fold them in half. So that step's easy. This is the step that kind of trips my students up a little bit. We're going to take our half and we're going to fold it in thirds. And the way that you can kind of do this is to sort of hold your paper and kind of measure it out. Find it where it fits and then just push it down. So the half will be folded in thirds so that when you unfold it, you have 6 boxes. Okay, so we've got 2 strips, they're both folded. And then we want to attach them by gluing. We're going to put glue on one end. We're going to cover the whole side with glue. And then we'll stick the other end right on top of it. We'll line it up and just completely cover the glued side with the end of the other strip so that we're making one really long strip. So I line it up right up to the crease. And if there's a little left over, like for example, I don't know if you can tell, but mine didn't line up exactly. So I'm just going to trim the little bit that didn't line up perfectly. Okay. And now, when you have your really, really long strip, we are going to fold it so that it goes every other way. So it's folded like an accordion. So your pages will go one to the other, like those wood toys that maybe you had when you were a kid. Back and forth. So it should open up like an accordion. All right, give me a thumbs up if we're good to keep going. Okay. Last step, we are going to cover these books. So we're going to take one end of our pack. We're going to put it in the center of one of our cardboard pieces. I'm just taking one end, doesn't matter which one, and then putting it in the center of the cardboard. When I do this with my students, this is where I pause to make sure that they have all folded it the correct way before we attach the other cover, just to make sure that it's all an accordion, because we're going to attach the other cover on the other side. So the book right now only has one cover. When it's closed, we're going to find the top of the last page and cover it with the other piece of cardboard right in the center. And when you're done, you'll have a covered book that opens up like an accordion. And as I said before, it's nice because it's compact, doesn't take up a lot of space, but it has a lot of pages. Kids will end up using the front and the back of these books throughout the quarter, since it's for my shortest class. Yeah, something to keep in mind is because they're drawing on both sides, I tell my students not to use Sharpie just because it'll bleed through, but yeah, or like thick markers, anything that will bleed through, I find that they don't think about that. And so when they get to the back side, they get frustrated that their papers have markings on them. So you remind them at the beginning of every period. And then here are some examples of my students, their work. Because they're open-ended prompts, a lot of them like to go with themes. One of my students, she drew a personified version of each word. Another one of my students, he drew places that each word made him think of. And when they're done, yeah, they look really awesome. It's a nice piece of art that students have created throughout the time together. And I also find that it's a good way for me to kind of get some time at the beginning of the period to take attendance, to make sure everyone's okay. They know to just start with this, and it's time to give them 15 minutes. So I also think that the size makes it a manageable task too. They don't get overwhelmed with this big piece of paper. Oops. So that is the accordion book. I do have some variations for virtual learning. You know, with the distance learning, not all students have access to all of these supplies, especially with bigger sizes of paper. So another sketchbook that I've done, we've used like packaging and strips of paper, and we ripped them in half using a ripping technique, and then we bound our folios together using a rubber band. So I've included that video in there as well, because obviously this new learning platform has provided some challenges, and access to supplies is one of them. I've also given my students this time around 2 options. They have the open-ended prompt. I choose for them because I'm sharing my screen with them, and a lot of them don't have printers, and so they can choose the open-ended prompt, or I found a YouTube channel that has step-by-step videos. It still incorporates the choice, but because everyone's on screens now, it just makes it a little bit more manageable. So there's links to those slides if you want to have those, and then the video for the packaging sketchbook too, if that's something that seems more manageable in this learning environment. Okay.
Hi, Ram.
That's just me giving instructions. All right. So the second activity we'll be walking through is the one-page book. And that is where I take a single sheet of paper and we do a folding technique and we turn it into an 8-page book. For this, all you'll need is a piece of copy paper and a pair of scissors. And then this is the second activity that I do with my students. So after they've created their accordion book, we start working on a more developed project. So the way that I start this is we do a planning page. And this is a good way for me to kind of focus on the art standards, the planning, and kind of instilling in them the idea that when we go about projects, a lot of times we really want to think about what it is that we're going to do. We want to get the ideas out of our heads. And the one-page book too is a way for me to kind of tie literacy in with the arts. And so we talk about, what kind of books need text, what kind of books don't need text. So they have 3 options. They can do an autobiography, they can do a book about a single topic that they love, or a step-by-step manual. So if they want to do the step-by-step manual, that's something that is probably going to need to have words. If you do the autobiography, what kind of pictures do you need to have that tells the story without the text? So the planning page really allows us to kind of dive into these literacy concepts before they put the pen to paper. And it's another way too to also, like I said, kind of get them thinking about planning before doing, because especially with my 6th graders, they come into the classroom and for them, everything's a race. They want to get done. They want to get through the project and just to say, I'm the first done. And so this teaches them patience and the process of thinking about the whole before doing the product. And this is also a link. If you want to use this handout, you can download it, make a copy of it. But I read through their work, and regardless of whether or not their final book has text, I want them to add explanations of their images in the planning page so that at least I know what it is that they're thinking. And, I conference with them, just like an elementary teacher or a writing teacher conferences, and we talk about the design and we work through this step together. So here are a couple of examples before I show you the folding technique. The planning page, they've thought about everything, and then, the artist on the left, she decided she didn't want to have pictures. She thought she wanted the images to speak for themselves. And then the other artist did choose to use text in hers. And hers was an in-depth exploration of Raphael, not the Ninja Turtle, the artist. She wanted to make that very clear. Here are some examples of how-to manuals, how to kick a soccer ball. One of my students did how to order from Chick-fil-A. Another reason I do this at the beginning of the year is because it's a really good way for me to get to know my students, to get to know what matters to them. When they do the step-by-step, it's usually something that they're really interested in. Same thing with the in-depth exploration. So here are a couple of autobiographies my students have done. And then some books about topics that they love. A lot of my students really wanted to do books about ghosts. That was like a very popular theme. One of my students did an exploration of the color yellow, a book all about food. And then they can also use any materials that they have access to. And so this translates really well to virtual learning. So anything that you have at home, go ahead and use it. And yeah, so that was my pro tip, is to do that at the beginning of the class or beginning of the year to get to know your students a little bit better. So here is the folding technique. And this I really do have to go slow with my students because it can get a little confusing. So we're going to take a paper and we're going to turn it horizontally, vertically, long ways, like a hot dog. Yeah, I'm going to fold it in half. Fold it in half like a hot dog. We want to make sure that we crease the paper really well. So we're folding it in half and we're creasing. And then we're going to unfold and refold the other way, just to kind of reiterate, and then crease it. The paper, it's been folded in half. Now we are going to fold it in half the other way. So if we're going to fold it like a hamburger, I guess. And I find it helpful to just unfold it the other direction as well. So it's folded in half like a hamburger, and this is where we're actually going to fold it again in half. So that when it's unfolded, it has 4 boxes on the top and then 4 boxes on the bottom. This is the step that confuses my students. We're going to take the paper and we're going to fold it back like the hamburger so that there's 4 boxes. And we have to make sure that it's open like a tent. And we find the center. And we are going to cut from the center line. We're going to stop right at the bottom of those boxes. And so what I usually do when I show them is I draw on mine so that they can see the line that we're cutting. And then I make sure that they show me that the paper is folded, because a lot of times I get them cutting the wrong side. So it's the center of the paper. We're going to cut from the center down. Just 1 box. The paper should have a hole in the center. Okay, and then this is where we do the fancy paper folding technique. So we're going to close our book like this. So I just folded my paper in half, and then we're going to push the pages together, and they just fold on top of each other. So we'll do that again. My paper is in half, and I'm going to push together. And they're going to fold just right on top of each other. This is the part I think that my students get stuck with. So my paper is folded in half. You push it, and then I just kind of push all the pages together. And then this is how I get my 8-page book, or I guess it's 6 pages with a front and a back cover. That makes sense. Should I do it again? Okay. That one has been a little bit more difficult to do virtually, but yeah, and it's nice because every student, you can do it with lined paper, you can do it with copy paper. So this is one that is accessible regardless. And in terms of the handout, they can fill it in virtually, they can upload the pictures, they can print it out and do it by hand. So that one I haven't had to adapt very much, but that's the 1-page book. Okay. All right, the last thing I'm going to cover is the concept of an artist's book. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this is something that I learned about in my undergrad program by going into the special collections department at SDSU and seeing all of the really awesome artist books that they have there. This is a concept that I would go over later on in the school year. It's something that I haven't done yet with my students, but I'm planning on doing it with my advanced class. After we've learned about the elements of art, we've talked about composition, and they have a good understanding of form and are able to really conceptualize more abstract ideas. So the way that I preface anything where I know I'm going to challenge students' ideas of a concept that they're already familiar with is I start off with a collaborative discussion. And so if you have not used Google Jamboard before, this is a really good resource because students can, they can all contribute to a single document. And I've done this before when we've explored the idea of portraits. We've looked at pieces of art, and what they can do is they can add sticky notes with their ideas. So like, for example, we'd go over, what is a book? What's something that a book has? Well, a book has to have pages, or a book has to have a cover. A lot of times they'll say a book needs to have words. A book needs to have pictures. So it's kind of their initial ideas. I don't give them any guidance other than just tell me what you think a book is or what features a book has. And like I said, Jamboard is a good way for them to all collaborate. If you have not used Jamboard yet and you work with middle school students, just make sure to preface that they are all going to be contributing to the document, that they need to be respectful. But this is how I'm going to kind of get them thinking about the concept of a book. And another way to kind of get into or appeal to students, especially at the middle or high school level, is by showing them resources that they can access. And so there are actually a lot of TikTok channels that have book arts or that are about book arts. And so my kids think it's funny when I show them TikToks, but this creator has these videos. And so, I'd show them this, what is a book?
Okay, so what is a book? Is a book restricted to the codex form we all know, or can it include scrolls? What if a book has no words? Or it doesn't have a cover? If someone hands you a piece of paper and tells you it's a book, is it? Is it a book if it has no pages? What if you can't even open the book? What if it doesn't have a spine? What if you can't even read the book? Or what if a book is appropriated? Is it a book? What if a book is giant and you can't even lift the pages by yourself? Is it a book if it's a performance? As an artist, I'm trying to reinterpret the book form, so I'm asking a lot of questions. And some of those questions make sense and some don't. What do you guys think? What is a book? Okay, so
Yeah.
what is a book?
Oops. And what's nice about these videos is they're super short. And a lot of the concepts she brought up are probably things that they've contributed to in the Jamboard: pages, words. Maybe if they were really thinking conceptually, they would have said binding. And so from there, we can start talking about how artists can push different types of boundaries with the work that they're creating, and the history of bookmaking versus what we consider books to be nowadays, and even how print is, I hate to say it, but kind of this dying concept. We have podcasts and we have videos and you have tablets, and how books are not as common as they used to be, or not the only way that we can get information. And so again, another video. This one's only a minute, but I think showing students the breadth of what books are, and how artists conceptualize books in a different way are really important to kind of help them break away from their own ideas or limiting beliefs about what a book is. So artist books are they're works of art that either utilize the structure of a book, or they're objects that can kind of allude to the form of a book. They can be simple, they can be very conceptual, and the rest of the presentation I've got different examples that you can see for yourself.
So the artist books in general, they're kind of hard to define, but here at MIT, what we've defined them as, for the sake of our collection, is a contemporary form of art in which artists, or a group of artists, take the codex or book form and just play with it however they'd like, and that could be in form, structure, or content. Artist books can provide another way in to material, can provide another way to engage with dialogue, or with historical events, or with scientific discoveries in a visual and tactile way that can be lacking in the classroom. I'm looking to collaborate with faculty and bringing them into the classroom and getting students to really just experience them. Because I can talk about them all day long, but if you don't see them, if you don't touch them, if you don't play with them yourself, then I could just talk and it wouldn't mean anything. Because you see all of the work that the artists have put into it, and all of the care and all of the thought, and it's really just so detailed that it's amazing. It's indescribable. These books are pieces of art, but also really influential pieces in the dialogue of society, and the potential for them is unlimited. So students can create their own artist books. They can make their own works based on whatever matters to them right now. Really, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, so again, just kind of showing students that books can be something that you can interact with. They can be things that take different shapes. So that's kind of why you want to have already really covered a lot of the design elements with them, so that they have an understanding of different forms and principles, like or just basic composition knowledge and understanding.
So the artist books in general, they're kind
Okay, there we go. So again, with the TikToks, I like them because they're short. And so this is a video. It's a book. Here, I'll play it. It's only like 15 seconds. And then it'll just loop like that. So with this book, we would talk about how all of the elements kind of support the subject of the book. So we talk about, what is the book about? It's about a brief history of kimono. Well, did you notice how the box that holds the book, it unfolds kind of in a similar way that, it matches the design of a kimono. Even the material that they use to kind of hold it together is sort of resembling the overall design of what a kimono looks like. Then we talk about some of the more or the less obvious design details, the paper choice, how the paper that was used is the same type of paper that was used in ancient Japanese scrolls and things like that, and how the images relate back to the text. We talk about the layering of the translucent paper over the images so that you can still see both, and how it adds another layer of interaction. And so when you think about art or books as an art form, it's not just that you are putting images and text together, but that you're really considering every aspect of your design, and every single thing from the stitching to the binding of the book has been a thoughtful decision by the artist. And what's nice too about a lot of these bookbinding techniques is that they introduce students to different cultures, and you can align them with what students are learning in their social studies classes or their language arts classes. So it also helps them sort of make these cross-content connections too. And that's something that I really strive for in my curriculum, is helping students see that art is not something that just occurs in the art room. It's something that just is so expansive. And then finally, another TikTok series, it's Book or Not a Book. And this is a good way for students to, again, challenge their thinking. These are short videos. This one is a book, and it's been preserved inside of a jar. So it's no longer a functional piece of text, but, well, I'll play it so you can see it. Again, short second. It's a short video.
Is this an artist book? Created by student Elizabeth Kramer, this work actually has a 1943 biannual report canned with fluid inside of a mason jar. Pigment from the book has stained the water, creating a murky environment that obscures the preserved book. Is this a reference to a biological specimen or preserved food? Even the notion of book preservation? Many questions are formed. Why is this book canned? What function does it serve? Does the canning elevate the artifact's value? What information is being conveyed through this presentation? But the main question is still, is this a book? Clearly the object inside the jar is a book, but it's now become part of the jar and the contents as artifact. The book has lost its traditional bookness and has now become an object of display with some other meaning than its original intent. So is this a specimen, conceptual piece, sculptural object, or is it just a silly pickled book? What do you guys think?
And so there's this whole series of Book, Not a Book. And a way that you can kind of do this, even using Zoom, is, turn your screen on if you agree that this is a book, turn your screen off if you don't think it's a book. And then you can engage in some discourse over what should a book have? Because technically it has pages, it has words. It's just a book inside of a jar. Do you have to be able to read the text in order for it to be a book? And it allows students, I think, to kind of expand their beliefs and to engage in academic dialogue and to think about those art standards presenting. So the presentation of this is essential to the overall meaning. If it wasn't in the jar, it wouldn't have the same effect. So students have to think about how they not just create their art, but how they show it, and the intention of the way that it's displayed as well. And then finally, one more video. If you've never seen the YouTube channel PBS Art Assignment, this is really an essential tool to my curriculum. This whole channel has a lot of different kind of concepts for debate about art, and sometimes they'll give you an assignment that you can do yourself. And yeah, this artist, his are very abstract. So again, it kind of goes with the whole, is this a book? Is this not a book? So I'll play it. It's super short. I think it's only 5 minutes, but this is something where you can show your students and then have them kind of produce their own version of it. That's what these specific videos are intended for.
Hi, I'm Ben Denzer. I'm an artist and designer. Your assignment is to make a book that's atypical in terms of its form or material. A book doesn't have to look or feel, or even taste for that matter, like what you typically have on your shelf. Look around your house or your neighborhood. What do you find, and how can you make a book from those things? I took a bookbinding class, kind of a hardcover bookbinding class at this place called the Center for Book Arts in New York. Taking a class on how to make a book really demystifies the process and shows you that, hey, this is actually just 3 rectangles glued onto a piece of flexible material, and you fold the edges, and then you have a hardcover book. And so it was through taking this class and realizing that I could make my own books, and then being at the Center for Book Arts, its mission is kind of to promote artist books and book arts. And they have a wonderful collection of artist books there. And so I got to see examples of people treating the book itself as an artwork. So Catalog Press is a small edition artist press that I make and publish myself, where all of the books are catalogs in one way or another. So catalogs of images, catalogs of words, and catalogs of physical objects, playing with this idea of the book as an object and what is a book but a collection of things bound together. And so how far can you stretch that? So you go to the grocery store and you see a packet of, slices of American cheese. If you put a cover around it, that instantly becomes a book. So some of the books I've been making play with this idea of ready-mades in a sense, where this is a book of 200 $1 bills that are used bills that I sorted in order of serial number. This is a book that I recently made kind of in quarantine of 1 roll of Charmin Ultra Strong toilet paper. I recently made a book of scratch off lottery tickets. So this is 77 lucky sevens, and so they're all lottery tickets that you can scratch off. So this book is worth potentially quite a bit if all of these is a winner, but who knows? I wanted to do a cover so that it would open perfectly flat. And so I went to a bookstore and looked at all of the kids' book section, because there are board books which open perfectly flat. The world of bookbinding is this kind of rabbit hole of lots of ways that people have figured out how to do things. So there's normally always a solution. It's just a matter of inventing it or finding it. I think part of the fun for me is trying to take this thing that people know and have an expectation for. The book, people have bookshelves in their house, maybe they have books around, so they kind of know what to expect. So part of the fun for me is trying to subvert those expectations and finding interesting, ideally funny ways of doing that by using maybe different materials or different scales or different ways of combining things. And so I think there's no, bad material for making a book. So I think the most challenging book I've tried to bind together was this book I recently made at the University of Michigan called 20 Slices of Meat. I've been wanting to make a book that was made out of 100% meat for quite a while. And while I was there, I went to Zingerman's Deli, and they were kind enough to kind of show me all the meats and guide me towards the mortadella. And I got these huge slices of mortadella that I then had to figure out how to bind into a book. So it was a process of trying different threads, different things from the butcher shop. After a lot of experimentation, I ended up using Gorilla Glue, which on the bottle says, this will stick to your fingers, and, meat is just like fingers. And so it worked out actually surprisingly well, where I was able to perfect bind this book of meat, gluing these mortadella slices together and making a cover and a spine all out of meat itself, and actually using the fat from mortadella to kind of inlay the words, 20 slices. So it worked out really well, but it was quite a challenge to figure out how exactly to make it all stay together. Making a book doesn't have to be difficult. There are a few basic, easy ways to bind pages together. 1, you could perfect bind something, which means taking a stack of pages and gluing them along one side. Another way to bind a loose stack of paper is stab binding. In stab binding, you poke holes along the side of the page near your spine and thread through them. Another method is simply folding. You could fold paper to make an accordion book. And lastly, there's signature sewing, which involves taking sheets and making signatures from them, and then binding these signatures together. That's how this book works. There are lots of things that are, already books around you. On your desk, you may have a pad of Post-it notes, and that itself is a book. You could either add content by writing on it or leave it as it is. There are things in your fridge, slices of things that are kind of inherently already books. You go outside, there are leaves all around you which can act as pages. When you're going about this assignment, think about, either trying a different weird material to use that it might not be paper. But if you want to use paper, what can you do with it that's different? Can you fold it in an interesting way? Can you make a book that's really tall or really long or is a circle? There are all sorts of ways to take this assignment. It's all about trying to, deviate from the expected form of kind of a rectangle book that you might have on your bedside table.
Thanks to all of our patrons for supporting the art assignment.
Yeah, so like I said, that I think will help students sort of challenge their ideas of what a book is. And as the video mentioned, a book is just a collection. It's a collection of ideas inside of a binding. And his books also bring up this concept of ready-mades or of appropriation. You can have that conversation with your students. Does putting things that already exist that have been made by someone else together constitute as making art yourself because you didn't make the products, but you came up with the idea? You can talk about how during the pop art era, ready-mades became this concept where they were just selling objects that had already been created by someone else. And I think that also allows students to engage in some really interesting conversations about what art even is. And then you've kind of blown their minds and challenged all of their preconceived notions of art and books and anything that they've known. So like I mentioned, I haven't done this yet, but I really want to do this with my students because I like to really have them think critically in my classroom about how art can impact all aspects of their lives and how everything that they interact with at its core is art. So
Hi, I'm Ben Denzer.
that's kind of all that I had in store for you, but I'm here if you have questions, and there is a survey for feedback. So I will go ahead and put that into the chat for everyone. And thank you for allowing me to kind of share my interest with all of you, and hopefully you gained some projects or some ideas on things that you can use with your own students.
Olivia, thank you so much. This is Meryl. That was like super cool. Let's see if we've got any questions. You can go ahead and unmute yourself or put something in the chat if you've got some questions. And I think we've got some. I'll monitor the chat too. Thank you. Amazing presentation. Thank you. Very cool clips to get the kids thinking. And maybe Olivia, you could stay on for a little bit too, in case people didn't get the, this one to be able to fold up.
Yeah.
I'm just so proud that you're a CSUSM alum as well. It's nice to be able to have our own do workshops. And Laura, I so appreciate the Virginia Hansen connection and combining our efforts together. Book arts is really very engaging, as Olivia has said. And I know I've seen kids in classes be just so excited. And someone wrote this in the chat much earlier on, that it's like magic. And it is very much like magic for kids, I think for teachers as well, and so creative. And I appreciate, by the way, Olivia, you making sure that you also call out the art standards, because a lot of times when we're doing activities in literacy or in math or whatever, and we integrate the arts, we forget to say that we're also meeting art standards, and we are. And so I really appreciated that about your presentation.
Thank you.
All right, such cool concepts. Thank you. I love that you talked about how we can bring this into the classroom on a regular basis. Very informative. I'm 100% going to do this with my students. So Chase, let us know how it goes. And Rocio, thank you. And so everyone, make sure, Olivia, maybe you can put the link again into the chat for the feedback for today. Thank you. Laura, you want to say anything?
No, I just really thoroughly enjoyed that. And my brain is just bursting right now with ideas. I'm so glad you mentioned social studies, which is my area, and it too often gets overlooked. And there's just a gazillion ways I think we could just ignite students' imaginations and just, just bring joy to learning. We just need so much of that. And so thank you, Olivia. That was just awesome.
Thank you.
Joy and fun, like people often don't associate that with teaching and learning, and they should. What are you thinking? Learning should be fun. It should be engaging. It should, make your brain go poof. And so that's a pretty cool thing. And this certainly does.
As teachers, I think we should always be asking ourselves, what am I doing today that makes make my students want to come to my class, want to come to school? And definitely through creativity and the arts, that is just one of the most wonderful ways to achieve that.
Yeah, and I can tell you that my students loved these accordion books so much that when schools closed in March last year, I got emails from all my sixth graders. I have to come and pick up I have to pick up my sketchbook. I need to show my parents. So they were so, attached to these because they built them from scratch that they wanted them, and yeah, made their parents go to school to get them in the middle of a pandemic, which was fine.
All right. So with that, the formal part of our PD is done. Thank you so much, everybody. But please, stay on if you want to have any discussion or ask anything. And Olivia's on for a bit. So please go for it.
Olivia, it's great to see another mid-level cohort. I was in 28 last year. And so did you have Erica and Lori? And I'll definitely have to say I saw a cohort, and I also ran into two of your cohorts at an assignment I was at. And I try to remember their name. I think they were 25, but one was Shay.
Oh yeah.
And Marco.
Oh, awesome.
So if I bump into them, I'll have to say I saw Olivia, but it was a great presentation. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I mean, I love Lori so much that I obviously chose to do her master's program. But if anyone has not done the San Marcos Writing Project, I am going to go ahead and just vouch for that. That sort of changed my whole life. And so I obviously love art, but I love writing too. And that's an opportunity I would take up. And then we'll be emailing the recorded video after the presentation as well. So for those of you that are asking, the slides for this will be in there too.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank
you.
Of
course.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you again. And thanks to Virginia Hansen and everybody for the presentation too. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Olivia? Have a great rest of the semester.
I had a
Thank
question.
you again, Olivia.
Yeah, of course.
Someone's got a question.
Yeah, I was wondering about the I guess the grading, right? When you do this virtually, do you tell them like, I guess it turns into a presentation also, right? Because they have to like hold it up, or do you collect it somehow?
So I've done it a couple of different ways. I use Canvas as my learning platform. And so Flipgrid integrates with Canvas, and they can kind of make a video of themselves showing their art and explaining. And
Oh,
so,
cool. Flipgrid, yeah.
yeah, they do that, or they take photographs, and then both of those include some kind of an artist statement too. So it's really important that they don't just show me what they did, that they explain their rationale. And that's another way that I tie those standards in, so that they can, really justify their thinking, and it adds more autonomy over what it is that they're doing too. Yeah, but Flipgrid or photographs.
Okay, very cool. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Great question.
That really was a great question. Because I think, a lot of times people really do ask or wonder, how do you assess students learning through the arts? And, I think one of the big myths is that you can't. And of course you can.
Right. Well, and then I also tell my students too, it's not about how good you are at art, because that's a really subjective idea. It's how much growth you've showed over time. And for me, the bulk of the grade comes down to the artist statement. I want them to be able to explain why they did what they did. Because if they can't rationalize their decisions, then it just seems like it wasn't thought out as much. But their skills are all in different stages. That's not something I assess them on. It really did. It's the ideas that they had, and that's I use a rubric to grade their reflection, but that's kind of the main thing. And then if they followed the prompt, so if we're making a book and they turned in a painting, then that's also something I have to consider too. But yeah, and that's where I also kind of slip some literacy skills in there too.
Okay.
All right.
Norris, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. I really enjoyed
Good to see you.
to see you again, Dr. Wendling. And thank you for the presentation, Olivia.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right. Looks like everyone's gone, so I'll go through it.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks again. That was really great.
Thank you. Yeah, I was kind of nervous, but I'm
You
used to
did a
talking
really
to
nice
12 year
job. You put together you did
Yeah.
a great job.
You have such a beautiful, calm demeanor that it just I just felt at ease, right, doing this, because it was just really so nice.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Is there anything else that I need to do?
No, I'm sorry Chris Wood couldn't be here.
Oh, that's okay. I talked to her yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I could fill in for her though. So
Yeah.
all right, everybody, have a great rest of the semester. Meryl, I hope to see you in person someday again.
I know. My God.
And it is
It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
it has been a long time we've been on campus. I was going to switch to FERC after this year, but with the budget so bad, and with Marissa and Travis are seniors now, so we just were doing college applications. They just submitted them. And I thought, well, if Ken has one more year of FERPing, and then if that went away, financially it would be really bad. So I'm planning to teach full-time next year, and then think about and hope FERP still exists, because I don't know, what are you thinking? Because you've been at the university, 1 or 2 years longer than I have.
Yeah.
This is my 20 years, I think.
Well, yeah, no, I don't have retirement in mind yet.
Okay.
I'll probably wait till at least I'm 65. So another, 4+ years before I even really think about it. Cause, I have Lily, I still have my mom. So, I'm supporting I'm supporting a lot of people. And
Yeah. Well, with Ken, he makes more money furping and working half time than he did while he was teaching full time. But
yeah, but then when it stops,
well, then he'll start Social Security,
yeah,
and that will fill in. So he'll basically have his full regular salary again.
yeah. So, but you have to be. Oh yeah, I was looking at my Social Security to see where it's the highest. So
Yeah, I think I have to be 50. Next week I turn 62, but I think I have to be 66 and a half because I was born in 58. So they, those of us.
Yeah, I think I'm the same. I was born in 59. So I think, yeah, so I've got I probably have another 6 years before I even contemplate.
Have you gone down to CalPERS and talked to them and done the numbers?
No, I haven't. Have you?
I did when Ken was doing it. That's why I don't think I need to wait that long, because there becomes a point of diminishing returns where, as long as you have FERP, and because FERP will fill in so that you don't have to start Social Security yet. Once you can start Social Security, then it will fill in the missing part with your regular retirement, and then you'll have like your full salary. But it's worth running the numbers and just see, because if you can switch, it would just free up more time to be with your mom or Lily or
Yeah.
But still, if we have the FERP, then we can still even work half time all year or part time. So it's just, I don't know, it's just more flexibility, but we'll see. I don't know, it's weird after so many years to even start thinking that we're the old generation, the old school.
I know. It is weird, isn't it?
Yeah, my mom turns 100 in January.
Unbelievable.
She's still going strong. Still lives in the house down there in San Diego I grew up in.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, there's no party for her. She said, it's okay. I just wait till I'm 101. And celebrate.
So, how does she have everything delivered? Because I assume she's not going out to stores and stuff.
Yeah, well, I've been going down once a week to take her to any doctor's appointments and make sure she has food. But she has her garden and she walks around the block, and we just try and keep her as protected as possible.
Yeah.
So of course every house around her is a mini dorm because she's so close to San Diego State.
Yeah.
There's like 8 kids in the house behind her. There's 12 in the house next to her. It's really crazy what's happening, that every house sells in her neighborhood. It turns into a mini dorm, and the garages turn into bedrooms. And then now San Diego allows those the little granny flats in the back. So a lot of people who buy them as investments are just filling in the backyard with rooms. So it's the neighborhood, there's hardly any single family living there anymore.
Unbelievable.
So she feels like she's the grandma of the neighborhood.
Well, she is.
Yeah, truly. So, and Lily, how's she doing?
She's hanging in there. It's obviously not easy, and because she's got special needs, it's so
Is she pursuing wouldn't she have an interest in design and fashion and
yeah, so she's not really pursuing that. She's got a little card business right now, and that's pretty cool. So she just got we put her cards in. There's a little like a boutique at the Forum called The Door, so she's pretty excited about that.
Oh, nice.
And she's still getting a lot of counseling, and it's just nonstop. We're trying to getting some training for independent living.
Mm-hmm.
So because at some point that hopefully will kick in.
Is she how old right now?
21. She'll be 22 in next month.
Oh, yeah. Gosh.
Yeah,
Well, I still remember her so tiny. So
I know. So what colleges are they applying to?
well, well, Ken was joking and said, they can go wherever you can go, want to, and get accepted. You just have to come home for Sunday dinner. So, so most of them are pretty close. The farthest away was Northern Arizona, but Marissa really hopes to go to UCSD. So they applied to a variety of UCs, most are in Southern California, and then San Diego State, Cal State San Marcos, some of the CSUs too.
Yeah.
So we'll see, what happens. It's God, when I went off to college, I only applied to UCSD, and now, you really have to apply to a variety of places, even though they have good grades and all. It's still, you just don't know,
Yeah.
where you get accepted. So that's the big question right now. And then if dorms will open, or what they're, whether they'll be here. If Travis got into San Diego State, maybe he could even stay with my mom because she's walking distance.
Oh, that's a really
University.
good idea, actually.
That would save a lot of money.
Yeah.
I saw Lori Stoll, what she was paying for her son to, for dorms and food and tuition. I mean, it's, and we got two, at the same time. So it's a big chunk of change.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
But,
Would Travis want to live with your mom?
yeah, I think he'd be willing to. Yeah. Yeah. So
I lived with my grandmother for a little bit when I was my senior year in college, because I was a RA and the dorms were closed during vacations and during winter break. But I needed to be in Boston just to do my student teaching and this and that. So I lived with my grandmother. I loved it.
Yeah, I think that'd be really make my mom happy for sure.
Yeah.
There's plenty of space in her house right now. So it's just so hard to know what her future holds, because she's doing well now. But once you're 100, well, I don't know,
Yeah.
Yeah. So you just keep happy every day that everything's going well, but
Yeah, really.
time will tell. So yeah, so this is that big transition year that we'll see how things go with Marissa and Travis and what happens with them.
Yeah.
And where they end up. Travis has a girlfriend, and she's a member of the Pechanga Native American tribe here.
Yeah, yeah.
So he's been learning a lot about their traditions, and they've been involving him in things, which is really nice. But a reason he doesn't want to leave the area, of course.
How did they meet?
At school.
Oh.
And then Marissa's really interested in oceanography and architecture.
Cool.
So she's good at math, and she's also pretty artistically inclined. So, but really depends on if you get an inspiring professor.
Yeah.
That can really determine your trajectory of what you end up majoring in and what fields you feel comfortable in and where you feel welcome. So we'll see what happens. I'll keep you posted.
Okay. Very good.
Oh, nice seeing you, Meryl. I miss you. It's so funny to think that in the old days we could just stick our heads out our office and wave down the hallway in Craven. And gotten so much larger, but I see your name here and there, so I know you're still hanging in there and in the parking lot. So it's like, oh, there's Meryl. All right, we're all still here.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, take good care of yourself.
Okay, you too.
A chance to get a little R&R. This has been quite a semester. I don't know how it is for you, but I've never worked so hard as I have this